What is something subtle people say that is a red flag to you? Below Deck said, I used to go to the bar after work with co-workers. One of the managers didn't go, but a co-worker kept encouraging him to come out and party. He relented and said he'd come out for one drink. At the bar, he took a sip and said, I haven't had a beer in 5 months. No one else took notice of that, but it struck me. He was gone a week later after coming into work drunk and doing something inappropriate. To anyone reading this, if someone doesn't want to drink, accept no for an answer. They might have a very good reason to say no, and pressing them on it, especially when well-intentioned, might make it much harder for them to say no. Mr. Miss Freddy said, it is a balancing act though. I haven't to enter into an interrogation when talking with them. It is awful when they are all together. Just a string of questions without really listening to the answers. Diarito said, yeah, same here. She'll ask you question after question until she gets to an answer she can insult you on. I was at a funeral a while back and I had sent flowers for the service. She asked me if I wanted to take them home, but I said that I was thinking about it, but then realized that I wouldn't be able to make it for the actual funeral. So, I just didn't want to just run off with the flowers before that. She said, yeah, I was about to say how tacky that is and how disappointed I would be in you. Yeah. That's why I said I wasn't going to. She also spent the rest of the funeral introducing me to people with what she saw were flaws in her mind. How I didn't get my driver's license until later than most, by choice, perfectly good public transport in my area, how I'm in my 30s and don't have kids, stuff like that. PODED99 said, when they are the victim in all of their stories. I had a colleague who didn't really have any friends outside of work. All of her stories were about how each of her friends had stabbed her in the back at one time or another. She went traveling to Australia with 6 girls and left early because they didn't want to do the things she wanted. It was glaringly obvious that she was the issue but still tried to play the sweet victim. There is another girl from my high school who has gained quite a few followers on social media through sharing her stories of being bullied in school for being bald. No one can remember that ever happening. She was quite popular but had lost touch with her group as you do when you move away for college. Also, she was never bald. Red flags when people enjoy pity. Crafty Custard Cream said, I hate this one so much. I dumped an ex over this. We broke up when he said but you're so good at it to try to foist the dishes on me one too many times and I started screaming at him that the reason I'm good at it is because I've had so much practice from lazy ass shits like him leaving it to me and if he lifted his own weight around the house he'd be good at it too and that I sincerely hoped he'd never find another woman who he would leech off. Not my best look, nor the best way to deal with that, but it really grinds my gears to have people try to pull that shit. Raven Wolf PS2 said, I have a really bad habit of doing everything by myself because I naturally feel like I can only trust myself to do it right. Eventually it gets exhausting. I'm always the one to cook around the house. Even when both my husband and I were working I was doing all the cooking. I would ask him to make one simple meal and he would either say but you're so good at it or but I suck at cooking X. There were a couple times when he messed up a meal a bit, like put the wrong milk in the stroganoff or too much garlic in the mac and cheese. Those are simple mistakes that can easily be corrected but he uses it as an excuse every time. It's even more frustrating because 1, he had also made some really good perfect meals in the past and 2, I haven't always been perfect at cooking either. I learned it by screwing up and trying again. So when he comes to me saying shit like this, it forces me back into that loop of always doing things on my own. Then he gets frustrated when I won't accept his help for other things. Earhorn Jones said, I really don't get why people do this. I was at a party this weekend with many people that I don't know. There were 3 or 4 couples there that were made up of people who clearly didn't like each other. One couple was openly hostile to each other to the point that I thought maybe somebody should say do something, but I was told that they're always like that. How do these people live that way? I'm generally a misanthrope, but even I like my own wife. Heck, she's just about the only person that I genuinely look forward to spending time with. Earhorn Jones said, my wife and I work in the same building. I usually eat lunch with my coworkers, but on the odd day when our schedules align, I'll eat with my wife, instead. On one of these days a coworker asked me why would you eat lunch with her? Do you like her better than us? I replied, of course, I do. I married her. I just sit next to you. I don't think he was able to comprehend the fact that I enjoy spending time with my own spouse. Fluffofthile said. My recent ex often did this when we had tough times. When we broke up, it was honestly such a relief to finally reply, "You're right, you've been selfish and you haven't treated me particularly well, and I deserve more than that. Hopefully you'll do better with others in the future." He seemed a bit stunned that it didn't get the reaction he'd always been used to. Just Step said. My partner uses this as an excuse for things he just doesn't want to do. If you ask his work colleagues, he never stays out late for work drinks because of me. Edit. This blew up. My partner isn't a jerk. His work colleagues can't accept he's not a big drinker and they always try to get him white gal wasted. Somehow going home to the missus is more acceptable than just not wanting to drink. Ivy Oak said. Same, but not with colleagues, with his family. I'll probably never be able to make up with them, because I found out I'm the excuse he uses for all kinds of things I'm not aware of. They think I won't let him see them. That's not true in the slightest, and I feel like the black sheep of their family. I wanted to invite them all to our wedding 3 years ago. He didn't. We talked about it, he really didn't want them there. Fine with me. But his family thinks I didn't allow them to be there, when in fact it was my idea to invite them. It still is a sensitive subject. Diatrix said. My friend's wife controls his whole life. It is disgusting. I once watched him call and ask permission to spend $3 of his money. They weren't even living together at the time. She doesn't work. She doesn't draw disability. Her excuse for not helping out now that the kid is grown is her disability. I have been allowed to see him for over 2 years now. I finally just gave up on him. It's really sad, because most of his other friends have as well. The Chaos Pope said. Simply looking at the statistics of car deaths versus motorcycle deaths is enough to keep me far away from motorcycles. https://www.askadamskutner.com/how-do-car-accident/compare-to-motorcycle-accidents/ The NHTSA reports that 13 cars out of every 100,000 are involved in a fatal accident, but motorcycles have a fatality rate of 72 per 100,000. Motorcyclists are also at a greater risk of a fatal accident per mile traveled. For every mile traveled, motorcyclists have a risk of a fatal accident that is 35 times higher than a car driver. Cinnamon Bun said. Yep, someone needs to tell the bikers where I am that t-shirt and tracksuit shorts are not what you want to be wearing if you take a slide on some tarmac. It's like people go full on stupid when the sun comes out here. I've seen more people on motorbikes and t-shirts than I have in the right armored gear in the past few weeks. When I rode, the minimum I'd wear is an armored leather jacket, jeans, armored gloves and boots, and a helmet of course. On longer rides those jeans would be swapped out for armored trousers. No matter what the weather, that's what I'd be wearing. For me, riding was not meant to be comfortable. Most of the time you're too hot, cold or wet. Emo, you want comfort, get in a car, which is what I did. A string of random char said. A few months ago I was talking to a woman in her 70s whose daughter is an alcoholic, abusive, etc. She literally said, I don't know what I did wrong. I gave her everything. I was her friend instead of her mother, and I remember thinking whether I should tell her that those sound like the exact things she did wrong. But Bagladabug said. You need to wait around 20 years to do the best friend thing. My mom made sure I was home on time, made sure I went to school and got good grades, didn't swear, got me to go to university and all the other great mom stuff that was annoying when I was young. Now, she is my absolute best friend by far. Solaris Eclipse said. Someone who frequently, in response to you telling them about the bad or inconvenient thing that happened to you, start with, well, what you should have done, or what I would have done, and then argue with your reasonings for not finding their solution helpful. These people tend to be very opinionated and stubborn, even in situations they don't really know anything about. This is especially true if paired with a tendency to always win, have bad losing habits, are generally immature, or have a history of just not knowing what they're talking about but just want to assert themselves in the conversation anyways. Edit. To those who do this to a fault, it's a completely normal behavior. Sometimes it's hard to not begin searching for solutions to a loved one's problem. However, it's different when you do it excessively, or to the point of making the other person feel stressed or incompetent. I'm mostly talking about this when it's accompanied by other red flags but can be a standalone depending on frequency, social context. Mountain Gloat said, less a direct statement and more of a behavior, but I find myself becoming less able to hang out with the people I know who seem to have no respect for any type of input I have on the subject, despite me trying to always at least entertain what they're saying for the purpose of the discussion, even if it's absurd. I'll have something to add, and they'll seem to not even hear what I've said, either ignoring it altogether or immediately dismissing it as incorrect, sometimes even using the same arguments I just said and explaining why what I just said is nonsense. And on the occasion that I actually decide to go through the effort of defending my stance, they usually end it with some dismissive statement like, well, that's your opinion. Yes, that is my opinion, and considering the fact that I have been sitting here listening to and showing respect towards, even if not always supporting, your opinion, I think would justify me in asking for the same basic respect. This turned into a rant, and I'm sorry about that. To put it shortly, I guess I'd say when a person seems to have a lot of difficulty with you disagreeing with them, and never seems to even pretend they are giving your position any real thought beyond no, you're wrong because, then I'd say they're your friend, and you should consider no longer trying to be theirs. Celestria said, when they disagree with someone, they default to attacking the person's character instead of their actions. We all do this from time to time, but with some people it's every time. The guy who messed up their order is an idiot. Their boss is an evil sociopath. The person on Facebook who expressed a political view that opposes theirs is a degenerate. That new intern at work is hopeless. In the end, the final result is that anyone they disagree with for any reason is either an inherently bad person who doesn't really merit listening to. Little Hobbit said, when I started my new job, the bubbliest girl who was loved by most of the staff and was also HR manager would act like this when me and her were totally alone. She would whisper ever so softly, to herself but to me, you get no thanks around here, no one cares. You just wait and watch the knives stabbing when you least expect it. This is something she did on my first day. I said to her, everyone seems lovely and accepting, and she said, well, wait until you get to know them. This was a HR manager. Edit, I've just realized this isn't very subtle. Also edit. Seems like a lot of people see this girl's actions as good. I don't. This was my first day, and I really believe if people start talking about others, they're setting the tone for you to perceive the person they are gossiping about. It made me nervous. Your first day is bad enough. I was there for 7 months and not one person showed any signs of being a backstabber. Not one. Nothing even remotely shady. Little Hobbit said, she was just an all-around bubbly person. She could switch between sad and happy at the drop of a hat. She came across as a manipulator or something. Have you ever known someone that you disliked and could not understand why other people liked them? Also, mostly it feels unfair. That's the way it was with her. Even my line manager recommended I go to her for advice if she was not around, and she couldn't praise her enough. I hated being near her. All she did was complain, but it was only to me. I'm quite soft, and she probably sensed I wouldn't say anything back. Heretical Demigod said, like 90% of these are just cases of projection. People stating they are the exact opposite of what they really or do think. And yeah, projection is not an attractive feature regardless of your relationship dynamic. I'd also like to say, in sincere and loaded apologies. My roommate will sometimes do shit that I've politely asked her to be more considerate about, like leaving my things dirty without even asking to use them first, and the next time it happens and I bring it up, I get an almost instantaneous "oh sorry" and then silence. Which tells me a few things. She apologized so fast because she knew damn well what she did and was prepared for me to react if and when I did. It's not even a real apology. It's a formality, just forcing out the words with no intent. Makes me feel like a parent talking to a little kid that doesn't feel bad about the thing they did that affected someone else. If it's a repeated behavior and there has been past incidents raised, you aren't sorry, you were sorry you got caught. To which I reply, I don't want to hear you're sorry, I want to see the behavior stop. Incredible that full-grown adults will just sidestep blame and act like saying the word sorry and then not making any changes whatsoever is a valid way to deal with things. Edit. Wanted to add the related quote from BoJack Horseman. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep doing shitty things and then feel bad about yourself like that makes it okay. You need to be better. Cornfancha 666 said, I have OCD. It is so fucking annoying when someone is like, oh, I washed my hands twice, I'm so OCD, fuck you. A person said this to me at a get-together the day after I got stuck in a loop adjusting the sugar container on the shelf for 40 minutes trying to position it right until my brain told me I did it the right way. My arms were exhausted from moving it side to side and resetting by taking it off the shelf and starting again. Having OCD is like having God think rules at you constantly until you want to fucking scream. Capned said, once upon a time, I worked with a big group of software developers who used an agile development method that had large planning meetings every 10 weeks. We would get big sheets of paper and tape them to the wall, and write down all the small tasks we wanted to get done in the next 10 weeks on post-it notes. Then, we would coordinate these tasks with other teams who had dependent tasks, and put them on the big sheets of paper. It was a process that took a couple of days. There was one designated piece of paper for issues that came up that weren't really relevant to the planning per se, but still needed to be addressed. This piece of paper was called the parking lot. It was a place to park issues to be worked later, so the main job, planning work, could get done. My understanding is that this was a formal part of the process. Replicant Police said, I'm not racist, but oatmeal refers to a preparation of oats that have been dehusked, steamed and flattened, or else a coarse flour made of hulled oat grains, groats, that have either been milled, ground, or steel-cut. Ground oats are also called white oats. Steel-cut oats are known as coarse oatmeal, Irish oatmeal or pinhead oats. Rolled oats were traditionally thick old-fashioned oats, but can be made thinner or smaller, and may be categorized as quick or instant, depending on the cooking time, which is shortened by the size of the oats in pre-cooking. The term oatmeal is used to describe a common oat porridge made from ground, steel-cut, or rolled oats. Some commercial packages display other ingredients, such as sugar, salt, flavorings, thickeners, vitamins or minerals, while highlighting quick, instant, cooking in separately packaged individual portions for convenience. Legilet said, using absolutes with someone they barely know. That's the best thing I've ever heard. I never do that. You're the funniest person ever, insert awkward fake laugh. I met a guy like that and had a bad vibe from moment one. He ended up touching me against my will and being a massive asshole to all of his exes. When I tried to talk to my crying friend at a party while he was with her, he screamed at me like I killed his puppy. Everyone looked over in confusion. All I said was hi, and he immediately broke into a fake laugh like I'm just kidding. I hope his current GF is treated better. I'll never work with him again if I can help it. Queasy Cherry 11 said, I'm a sapiosexual. I've met very few people who are just plain stupid. Everyone is smart in different areas. So to me this just says my initial judgment of someone's intelligence is the one true measure of intelligence, and usually means they will talk down to you until you can prove yourself suitably intelligent in an area they deem reputable. A marker that someone is close-minded, arrogant, and unlikely to take on any new information that doesn't align with their existing views. To me that's far less attractive than someone with dyslexia who misspells simple words when texting. Work Hater 1 said, men when they say something like you let me do anything or you allow anything or am I not allowed to do everything by you? It's a serious red flag and means they're users who will dump you from the moment you start mentioning your desires. They're usually emotionally unavailable and only care about their own needs. It happens mostly with older men with baggage who have not 1 ounce of energy left for a woman and just want sex and be left alone. This is why I don't give men sex anymore in the first months no matter what they tell me. Evis Chiel said, in my experience, whenever a man calls his wife woman, as in, instead of saying her name, or something like honey, he refers to her as woman. For example, my uncle would frequently say to his wife, woman, go get me a beer or similar. Both men I've met that have done this have ended up being abusive assholes. My father-in-law would always refer to my mill that way, and it gave me a bad feeling. Sure enough, it came to light that he was abusing my mill and constantly verbally degrading her. My uncle always did this too to my aunt, and he ended up in jail for pedophilia and RP, and was also just all around hateful to his wife.